Years ago, I made a small series critiquing Resident Evil Village, and I did a disservice by getting quite a few things wrong. I don't like being wrong. So, in preparation of the upcoming Resident Evil Requiem, I am going to be correcting those mistakes by not only going over the game again, but looking at Resident Evil 7 and its DLC. Taking a look at the entire story as it stands so far, making sure no narrative stone is left unturned. I will not be looking at Resident Evil 8's DLC, however I have played it. I made sure to do that.
I am not going to be referring to past Resident Evil games all that much. It is important that this game is judged for itself as opposed to its parents, however good or bad.
Mauler makes a point about evaluating each Resident Evil installment on its own, and while I respect that perspective and I agree with it, I do think it is important to compare these games to their previous entries. So I will periodically be making comparisons to the previous games. So, in preparation of this whole thing, I made sure to beat every main Resident Evil game to make sure that I, without a shadow of a doubt, understand the Resident Evil series up to this point. The only thing I'll say, I only played the remasters of 1, 2, and 3 because GOG apparently doesn't want to launch at the moment, so it's in the timeout corner. Bitch. But I do want to play those original versions at some point. And they're available on GOG. You can get them in a bundle. Isn't that nice? Anyway, I played the games, I don't want to think about 6, and at the time of recording this line, I have 78 hours in 7 and 118 hours in 8. I made myself a bit of a roadmap for this critique and, well, let's just say this is going to be lengthy. And because the script for this is about as long as Garten of Banban's was, this critique will be split into 2 videos. This video going over 7, the second going over Village. I'm not going to make you sit through another 3-hour video. And don't worry, you won't have to wait too long. The second video is already uploaded and processed. I will release it tomorrow. So, let's get started. These 2 games make up one complete story, presenting us with Ethan's arc, but what is the story, Bowie? I'm glad you asked. In the year 1920, a little girl named Ava died from the Spanish flu. Receiving this devastating news, her mother, a Romanian researcher named Miranda, ventured into a cave system with the intention of taking her own life. However, before she did, she stumbled on the Megamycete. The Megamycete changed her into what she is now and gave her immortality. At the same time, she learned that the Megamycete has a catalog of DNA stored in it, including Ava's. Knowing the Megamycete's abilities, she believed it should be possible to revive her daughter by means of a vessel created through experimentation with a psychotropic mold referred to as the Mutamycete. For the next 100 years, Miranda conducted these experiments with the mold and local villagers, and the occasional foreigner. Over time, she gained the attention of Dr. Oswald Spencer, who ultimately concluded that the mold will not help him in his endeavors and moved to Africa to begin research for the T-virus. Sometime later, members of a shadow organization called the Connections approached Miranda and offered to assist her in her experiments. She provided them with a sample of the mold and Ava's DNA. 16 years after the outbreak in Raccoon City, the Connections created the E-Series bioweapon creatively named Evelyn, in the interest of selling the weapon on the international black market. The Connections feared that if Evelyn remained at her current location, she would be stolen by other organizations. So she was placed in the care of Operative Mia Winters and Assistant Director Alan Droney during transport to Central America. Evelyn took on the persona of a little girl having a strong desire for a family that could be manipulated, allowing Mia to become a mothering figure, preventing her from being attacked by Evelyn. However, Evelyn escaped her caretakers and gained enough power to tear the ship that was transporting them in half, but not before infecting Mia with the mutamycete that she was created with, manipulating Mia into sending a message to her husband, Ethan Winters, in hopes of getting him to come find her. The ship and the only survivors, Evelyn and Mia, washed up in Dovey, Louisiana. The Dovey plantation, housing the Baker family, is going about a normal stormy day when Jack Baker, the father, finds both Mia and Evelyn. The family attempted to look after them, and then strange and some disturbing events started to occur. The daughter, Zoe, finds Lucas, unconscious, discovered her mother Marguerite horribly afflicted with evidently some kind of parasite, later discovered to just be some form of Evelyn's infection. Jack tried to subdue Marguerite only to become infected himself. Lucas is quickly subjected to the same treatment. Zoe attempts to escape and finds Mia and information that there's a cure for the inherent infection that is quickly spreading, and waits and survives until she can create a cure and escape. Evelyn infected the family with the same mutamycete that she was created with, allowing her the ability to control them. In exchange for providing observations and information to a secret third party, presumably the connections, Lucas was immunized to Evelyn's abilities. Over time, the estate and surrounding buildings began to rot and decay, while Evelyn continued to force the infected family to kidnap more and more victims with the intention of adding them to the family. This intention is represented by the masses of molds seen throughout the house, enough to form the molded, or friends as Evelyn calls them. They're highly evolved bacteria that are solely controlled by Evelyn. While this was happening, Evelyn's separation from her caretakers and regular treatments caused her to age rapidly, resembling an elderly woman in a wheelchair. This brings us to Ethan Winters. Ethan believed his wife to have been missing for 3 years. After receiving an email from her, he leaves for Louisiana in an attempt to find her and bring her home. Exploring an abandoned house, Ethan finds her locked away in a basement, apparently suffering from some form of mild amnesia. As they try to escape, Mia's infection takes over and she attacks Ethan, forcing him to fight her off multiple times until Jack seemingly knocks him out. Ethan then fights to survive in the mansion and is contacted by Zoe, who informs him that there is a cure for the infection, at which point he goes to gather the ingredients he needs and defeats Jack, Marguerite, and Lucas, in their own areas, and creates the cure and injects it canonically into Mia, leaving Zoe to stay behind. Mia and Ethan once again attempt to escape, only for Evelyn to stop them and capture Ethan. Mia wakes up near the remains of the ship and attempts to rescue Ethan. Along the way, she speaks to projections of Evelyn, who continuously refers to Mia as her mother, and eventually her memories are restored. She eventually finds Ethan and gives him a vial containing Evelyn's DNA sample. She then fights off the infection long enough to push him out of the ship and save him. Leaving the ship, Ethan discovers a small lab in the salt mines and learns that Evelyn is an E-series bioweapon capable of infecting people with a psychotropic mold, allowing her to control them, resulting in their insanity, regenerative abilities, and mutations. Using the lab available to him, Ethan creates a serum using Evelyn's DNA to kill her. He injects her with the serum and she mutates into a monster, but with the help of a squad from the reformed Umbrella organization, he defeats her. Once she is properly dealt with and crumbles to bits, the team leader, a lone BSAA operative who is revealed to be Chris Redfield, extracts Ethan and Mia by helicopter and stays behind to apprehend Lucas Baker. Cornered in a research facility, Lucas mutates and Chris is forced to eliminate him. Chris returns to base, relocates Ethan and Mia to Romania, promising to keep them safe, where they have a child named Rose. But Bowie, how do we get to all the crazy stuff that happens in the village? Don't worry, I'm getting there. After somehow hearing about Evelyn and the events in Louisiana and that Mia and Ethan had a child, Miranda is ultimately convinced that Rose is the vessel she has been waiting for and kidnaps Mia and shapeshifts to take her place in the house to capture Rose. Learning of Miranda's intentions, I don't know how, Chris storms the Winters' house and eliminates Miranda and extracts Ethan and Rose. Assuming that Ethan would want to get involved, and because Miranda moved quicker than they anticipated, Chris made the decision to not tell Ethan the situation. During transport, Miranda wakes up, breaks out, and attacks the trucks and escapes with Rose, leaving Ethan alive. Ethan wakes up to a destroyed truck and a dead guard and trudges through the snow to find a small rural village. He investigates the seemingly abandoned village and discovers that almost the entire village is dead and is being ravaged by lichens. He then hears a radio broadcast from a group of survivors and makes his way to the house that are taking shelter in to meet them and potentially gain some assistance in rescuing Rose. After a brief meeting and a chant, all the survivors die, but not before Ethan learns that Rose could possibly be in the nearby castle. He attempts to go to the castle, but is immediately captured by the metal manipulator Heisenberg. When he wakes up, he's chained to the ground in front of Miranda and the four lords, Heisenberg, Lady
Dimitrescu,
Beneviento, and Moreau. with Heisenberg and her arguing over who should kill him. Miranda decides that Heisenberg should kill Ethan, and he lets him go to be chased by lichens and fall into death traps. Ethan escapes and proceeds to the castle, where he meets a traveling merchant, the Duke, who also suggests that Rose might be in the castle. Ethan enters the castle searching for where his daughter could be and eliminates Dimitrescu and her 3 daughters, awarding him with a flask. He comes down to the altar area where he reunites with the Duke, who reveals to Ethan that the flask he is holding is a piece of his daughter. Ethan is then sent on a quest to recover all the flasks and stop the 4 lords in their respective areas. After defeating Heisenberg, Ethan is confronted by Miranda, who rips out his heart, supposedly killing him. Miranda left Ethan alive so he could get rid of the 4 lords for her, and that's why she supposedly called off the lichens, let Heisenberg handle killing Hess during their little debate thing, and helped him as the old lady, and only stepped in after he got rid of Heisenberg. Ethan enters a lucid state and learns that Jack Baker actually killed him, and Evelyn infected him with the mold, revealing that he cannot die and is entirely made of mold. During this time, Chris and his team work to clear out the village of lichen bioweapons created by Miranda and rigs the Megamycete with explosives. Going further into the caves, Chris discovers a lab area with cells where he recovers the real Mia, who tells him that Ethan is who he is. Ethan wakes up with the Duke, giving him a ride to where Miranda is. Ethan fights Miranda, gets Rose back, only for his body to start crumbling away, at which point he gives Rose to Chris and stays behind to destroy the Megamycete. So now that we have a complete telling of the story out of the way and context provided by the Resident Evil 7 DLC, I have more questions than I had the first time. That's a good sign, right? Though I suppose the very first question should be, where do I start? The first thing I have to ask is this. When Ethan first arrives at the Dovey plantation, he wanders through the swamp and finds his way to the guest house, outside of which is a small smoldering pile of things, implying they were just recently burned. Among those things is Mia's purse, so here's a few questions. Mia's been missing for 3 years, and part of those 3 years she was with the Bakers, so why did they wait until now to get rid of her purse? How did the purse end up there when the ship she was on was split in half? And lastly, why is the purse pristine among the other burned items? Why did the Bakers not get rid of the purse earlier than this? Why did they just throw it in the pile rather than burning it with the pile? The purse exists for 2 reasons, one of which we'll discuss in the gameplay section. The other is to show us that Mia was in fact here, giving us a reason to continue to move forward into the house. Mia is the MacGuffin in this story, and a MacGuffin is an object or device that serves merely as a trigger to move the plot forward. Mia is the reason why we are here, why we won't leave, and why we continue forward. We must save her. All of these questions that we just asked are questions that we need to ask because attention to detail is an important aspect to creating an immersive narrative, and decisions need to make sense, not necessarily realistic. You can have unrealistic situations and decisions as long as they make sense. We'll talk about this more later, but if your character makes decisions or commentary that doesn't make sense to the situation, that will have the potential to break immersion and the narrative will fall apart. As I delve deeper into the gameplay section, you will see mechanics such as the illusion of choice that you're seeing demonstrated right now, which can break this immersion, affecting our connection to the narrative. The psychological tension that you spend time building with the atmosphere and the sound design and this moment is disrupted when games lean heavily on the illusion of choice. When players realize that their actions, or in this case inactions, have no genuine consequences, it can shatter the carefully created atmosphere, pulling them out of the experience. Immersion is delicate, and for a game to maintain that tension, it must ensure that player choices, or the semblance of them, hold weight. Oh, and speaking of completely shattering the atmosphere that you've created, ladies and gentlemen, this is how you get your audience to stop caring about any kind of connection the player character will have to the person they're here to rescue. So with this action alone, right here, yes, I am asking the obvious questions. What's going on? What's happening? Why is it happening? Who is Mia? You know, what the hell is happening? But that comes at the cost of me also saying, oh, I just killed Mia as far as I know. So I guess I leave now? So then this happens. So Ethan's hand gets cut off, and we'll ignore just how completely unrealistic running around with a bleeding stump is, but yeah, he kicks ass and takes names despite being an office worker from what I can gather, and then Jack knocks his lights out. Next, he wakes up bound to a chair, and his hand is being stapled back on. Let's talk about this situation for a moment. Oh, the person stapling my hand back on is Zoe, by the way. Say hi, Zoe. We'll talk about her in the character section, but I suppose I'll be nice and give more attention to her than the game did. This is Zoe Baker, and she's been on the plantation since the whole household turned sideways. Honestly, there's really not a whole lot to say about her. She is the quest giver. Her character is often sidelined, and she only becomes relevant when Ethan needs to be told what to do next. So anyway, Zoe, I'm assuming that you poured some goop on my hand for it to continue to function like a hand, because, you know, just stapling it back on wouldn't do that. So, why are you stapling it back on? Because the goop is able to reattach stuff without staples. There's no way you didn't know that that's a thing. Speaking of which, how the hell does this stuff work? How does it heal us the way it does? There are theories that Ethan is heavily infected, and that was why it worked the way it did. It just assisted to speed up the process. And while it is unfortunately canonically true now, I will name some issues with this. The first issue being that the goop works to immediately stop your stump from bleeding as soon as you get your hand cut off, or to heal before that if you don't defend from Mia and you take damage. This is at the very beginning of the game before you get killed by Jack. Ethan is not infected yet. Being able to heal here just defeats the entire argument right there, which is why we do not retcon things. Capcom, working straight from only Resident Evil 7, this occurs before we are given the implication that Ethan is infected. I will explain. In Mia's little memory segment, we are shown Mia getting covered by the mold, the black veins appearing, her freaking out, and then the veins disappearing, giving very, very strong implications that Mia is now infected, showing that that is the definitive infection process. If this happens to you, you are going to be infected, for sure. And then we see Ethan in that exact same state, covered in the mold, when we're playing as Mia and we find him in the ship. He is now, at this point, definitively infected. So we are not given any implications that he is infected until this point in the game. Which leads us into the second issue, being at no point are we given any indication that Ethan is infected by anyone up until Evelyn captures him. The second being right here when he's talking to Zoe about getting a serum. She never says that he's infected. She only mentions that she needs the serum to leave the property, and the same goes for Mia.
Now listen carefully, Ethan. My family and our bodies are contaminated. I can't leave the property unless I get it out. And the same goes for Mia.
Is there a way to get it out?
We need the serum. It should clear whatever this stuff is out of the body, as long as you're not too far gone.
Not us, Mia. And I think it's reasonable to assume that Zoe would know if he was infected or not. If he needed a serum to leave, she probably would have mentioned that. And then we see how well that works, but I digress. We have no reason to believe that Ethan is infected up until Evelyn captures him. And the last issue being the goop itself. What exactly is in this stuff that makes it able to reattach limbs? But Bowie, there was first aid spray and herbs in the other Resident Evils. Yes, I know that, but they weren't used to reattach fucking limbs. And 2, the magical spray only existed in gameplay as a healing mechanic. That never came up in narrative. At no point did Claire say to Marvin, "Oh, Marvin, you're fucked up. Here, let me spray you. You'll be fine." No, Floppy Feet is a goner. He's gonna be a zombie, and there's nothing you can do about it. At no point did Leon say, "Whoa, Annette, looks like that monster fucked you up. Here, eat this plant, and I'll spray you a little bit. You'll be fine." No, it gets a little iffy with the intro to Resident Evil 6, but it's still gameplay when you take an herb and crunch it up into easily digestible pills to give to Helena. That is not a cutscene. You know, I don't know why these campaigns take like 3+ hours.
Yeah, I don't know either. Look at this.
Can't figure it out.
To get to the ace of spades.
You pushed me. Or somebody did.
Captain.
It definitely wasn't me.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around what I'm seeing here.
Where are you? Oh, just...
Oh my god, this game. Nope. I'm not talking about 6 right now. In these games, this mechanic is actively part of the narrative. Jack cuts off Ethan's leg and tells us to use the goop to reattach it.
You can do it. You better now.
What the fuck?
And then fast forwarding a bit, it... It is actively part of the narrative. Why should I care about anything getting cut off when I can just reattach it in the universe? I am damn near unstoppable. How can you have the protagonist have limbs get cut off in a violent event, but also have him continue to be the protagonist without impediments to movement and actions? There were just no consequences whatsoever. Fatal wounds just aren't a thing anymore. When a character faces a traumatic event, such as having a limb severed, only to remedy it moments later without lasting effects, it can diminish the gravity of threats in the game, and therefore the immersion that you've been building just goes out the window. This could potentially lower the stakes and make other threats seem less meaningful if the player believes that it can be easily reversed. Like, and this is purely a hypothetical example, death. This lack of lasting consequence can reduce tension in a horror game. If players feel that there is no real danger or potential loss, then they might not experience the same level of fear or urgency. It's no longer a question of whether you'll be fine, it becomes, I know I will be fine. In story-driven games, especially those within the horror genre, it's vital for players to feel that characters are vulnerable and that their decisions or experiences have weight. When events appear to lack lasting consequences, it can weaken the narrative's impact and the immersion to the player. Something that you want to maintain if you're creating a horror game like this. You want to maintain immersion, tension, and some realism. We talked about why in previous videos, but back to Ethan. Ethan's ability to rapidly recover from what would typically be considered fatal or significantly debilitating injuries might make some players question the genuine danger of his situation. There is a reason why you don't cut full appendages off of your characters. How are you going to explain how the main character is fully functional throughout the game? Now, you may be inclined to mention that Outlast also cuts things off of the character. However, there is a fundamental difference between these two games. Miles is not using any firearms, he is only operating his camera, which can still be done with less digits on his hand. And they don't use some water magic to reattach the fingers and be fine. He is permanently disfigured. In other Resident Evil games, the healing mechanic was a first aid spray. We accept this mechanic because this never comes up in any cutscenes. It exists solely as a mechanic. This healing juice, however, is directly given to you by one of the antagonists saying, use this to fix your leg after cutting off your foot. In Resident Evil 8, Ethan heals the tears in his hands and reattaches his hand in cutscenes. It is fully within narrative, and it only removes stakes. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's look at the environment and a character action real quick. Jack and his attempts to block off these crawl spaces. Jack, I can see that you made some kind of effort after Zoe used them to get away from you, but why just add a lockable door? If you're trying to prevent someone from accessing it, wouldn't it be more sensible to permanently seal it or block it off with boxes or something? And speaking of Jack, let's address some redundancy. We're shown this scene in the garage.
Do I have your attention, boy? You're about to see some wonderful. Oh, fuck!
And then this scene when we see him again in the upstairs bathroom.
Heck of a thing, ain't it? Sure shit beats the hell out of dying.
Well, now, hang on here. This seems a little familiar. You know, I could have sworn I've seen this before. Can you remember where? Hang on, let me play you something here.
Ethan, it's okay. It's okay, it's me. I know you didn't mean to hurt me. You shouldn't have done that!
Anyone else getting some kind of deja vu here? So here's my question. Why do we have all of this happen with Mia, showing us that we can kill her and she'll come back, showing a limb being cut off and immediately get it back, if you're just going to do the exact
Sure shit beats the hell out of dying.
same thing all the fuck
You better now.
What the fuck?
over again? Why does the game, and by extension the narrative, continually showcase the reattachment of limbs or the resurrection of characters and act as if it's brand new information each time? I kinda got it the first time, thank you very much. Resident Evil 7 seems to repeatedly drive home the same points, which can make a player think, does it think I missed it the first time around? Repetitiveness like this detracts from the narrative's pacing and can feel condescending. It's crucial in games, especially ones with intricate stories, to respect the player's intelligence and capacity for comprehension. I'll say it again since I think it bears repeating because it is a crucial fucking concept to understand in story writing that I have seen missed time and time again. Respect your audience's intelligence. From this point up until the ship, the only things that I have to say are related to gameplay and character stuff, so I'll save those for their appropriate sections. And speaking of the ship, welcome aboard. Now that we're here, let's talk about this mold and infection stuff a little bit more. Let's cut to the flashback, shall we? So at the start, we learned that Alan is infected seemingly very recently, but he doesn't seem to turn insane. He acts like he's wounded, but he doesn't regenerate or heal. Very strange. Cut to the galley, and Mia says,
"She's vomiting. Far more in excess of her body mass."
Oh, great. We're gonna be seeing a lot more of her ugly friends if this keeps up.
So I guess the terminology for Evelyn creating large clusters of mold is vomiting. Maybe that's how she makes these clusters? Lovely. And her friends are the molded, by the way. So now I need to ask, is she using corpses from everyone she's killing in the ship, or is she just able to pop the mold out of thin air, like we'll be led to believe she's able to do? I'm inclined to believe the latter because we can see various dead bodies throughout the ship. She doesn't use the bodies. She doesn't need them. Now we're at the end and, Evelyn's just able to kill him, huh? And hang on, if you choose to cure Zoe, she does the same thing. Am I mentioning this for a reason? Probably not. Anyway, he's dead now, and we see the exact moment when Mia becomes infected. The game portrays this by showing the black veins disappearing into your arms, signifying for future reference that whenever you get covered in this mold stuff, you are definitely infected. In fact, we are told that seeing black veins in your arms is definite confirmation that you're infected before this game was even released. That's right, I'm talking about the demo, the beginning hour. Actually, come to think of it, black veins have historically signified some kind of infection in Resident Evil games. Examples being Jill in RE3 and Leon and Ashley in RE4. That probably doesn't mean anything. So now we have a nice, pleasant conversation with a non-infected Jack. How? Jack is very dead now. The only possible explanation, which will be a damn stretch if ever there was one, does not come from RE7 but from RE8, which I have small contentions with because we don't learn that if we don't look at notes, but I digress. It is possible that since Evelyn was created by a sample of Ava's DNA and a sample of the Megamycete, she retains some of those cataloging abilities for the Megamycete, and the real Jack continued to exist in the catalog that allowed him to talk to Ethan after he became infected. But like I said, this is a stretch and has its own set of contrivances. Ultimately, I don't think this should have been here. I'd like to pause and look at Evelyn's infection a little bit closer, and we're going to borrow some information from RE8. When the Bakers were infected, they were alive, and it's very clear that they are not like the molded. They're still mostly human despite the insanity and the mutation stuff. Their transformation into monstrosities with heightened regenerative abilities paired with the insanity is attributed to Evelyn's influence. We also know that Evelyn tells us that Jack killed us and that we're only alive thanks to her infection. But hang on. Infected corpses, as shown in RE7, typically morph into the molded, and the transformation seems to take ages, damn near most of the night while Ethan is there. So how is it that Ethan, after being presumably killed by Jack, 1. appears unaffected much like the Bakers, 2. doesn't regenerate a bitten hand, and 3. remains uncontrolled by Evelyn? And on top of that, why were none of the Bakers surprised that the man who is supposed to be dead came back to life as a normal human, not molded? Everyone they killed up to that point got turned into molded. Do you see how Jack killing Ethan fucks everything up? Fuck, let's talk about this. When you create a fictional world, you want to establish rules. Things that can, and perhaps more importantly, cannot happen. Take, for example, the universally understood lore surrounding vampires and werewolves. For no particular reason. Vampires are immortal and never age, but they cannot survive in daylight, do not reflect in mirrors, and require blood to stay alive, consequently being rather easy to identify in theory. Werewolves, on the other hand, are also immortal, can function and appear as normal humans, but must transform during a full moon. Vampires can only be killed by either exposure to daylight or a wooden stake through the heart. This is relevant, I swear. And werewolves can only be killed by silver, be that by bullets or sharpened objects like knives or swords, take your pick. These are rules in fiction. They create stakes and require you to come up with a way to kill these creatures. We know what their limits are. And we know that if we want a vampire to do something while it's daylight outside, we should have said vampire act knowing that there is like a time limit, and absolutely have them either set on fire or turn to stone, those being the consequences of doing something that will harm them. Not suddenly make it nighttime so the vampire can continue existing after whatever it was they were doing, or have them just miraculously completely ignore that rule. These rules not only dictate the behavior and limitations of these creatures, but also set boundaries. It is vital to understand not just what a supernatural entity can do, but also what it cannot do. I want to know the rules for this world. I want to know the limits of Evelyn's powers. I'm not as interested in what she can do as I am in what she cannot do. The problem is that I can tell that there is no consideration for establishing these rules, or at least not establishing them well. In the case of Evelyn and the infection, these rules seem muddled and inconsistent. This isn't about nitpicking details, but rather about the essence of storytelling. If we, as the audience, don't understand the confines of the world we're navigating, it disrupts immersion and the narrative stakes become unclear. The challenge for any storyteller is to construct a world that, no matter how fantastical, remains internally consistent. While we're on the subject of consistency, or lack thereof, let's talk about Lucas. Taking a closer look at the notes scattered throughout the game, we learned that Lucas was supposedly immunized against Evelyn's control. However, the implications of this claim are murky at best. He displays the same rapid healing, exhibits similar bouts of madness, and ultimately undergoes a mutation akin to the others. Are those qualities of just the product of being infected with the mold, and it just means that Evelyn isn't able to control Lucas through the mind control bullshit? Was Evelyn just okay with this? Was she not extremely concerned that this person who she was previously able to control is no longer able to be controlled? Why does she have such a strong desire for a family yet does not give a singular shit about anything that happens within that family? Like Lucas putting Mia in a cell in the basement, or getting immunized. Moreover, if the above traits are indeed mere byproducts of the mold infection, then why does Ethan, who we know has also been infected, appear so normal? After enduring a fatal injury like having his heart torn out, why does he not show signs of mutation? Actually, that's another thing. Lucas wrote that he locked Mia in a basement and no one cared. Evelyn, why do you not care that Lucas locked her up somewhere? I don't understand you. So another thing that I want to bring up, I know, just follow along with me here. Remember our first encounter with an infected Mia. Alright, cool. Well, this time we get this flashback sequence complete with Evelyn visibly present during the scene, implying that Mia's violent outburst wasn't just a random act of insanity, but likely a direct result of Evelyn's suggestions. Remind me, what was it that Evelyn suggests to Mia? I keep forgetting.
Kill him, Mommy.
Oh, right. Yeah, so, kill Ethan. couple things here. Firstly, I guess kill him translates into cut hand off and fuck off upstairs to Mia because, you know, she cuts his hand off with a chainsaw and then walks upstairs and hides outside? Sure. And secondly, and by far the most important thing, remember when Jack said this?
I was gonna be your father. Now she says he will be her father.
And when Mia said this?
We're gonna be a family now that you're here.
Pause the video now to make your guess at what question I'm gonna ask. Why the fuck do you flip-flop between wanting Ethan dead and alive? He quite literally had nothing to do with Mia pissing you off. Having your bad guy characters die because they decided to be fucking idiots is the absolute worst way to make the protagonist win. There is absolutely zero character development by outsmarting or outwitting the antagonist. There's barely a challenge outside of the standard boss difficulty stuff. Establishing your antagonists can do specific things that greatly affect the protagonist and then have them just not do that so the good guy can win? There aren't enough words in the English dictionary to describe how low effort, lazy, and nonsensical that is. Like, why establish that thing if you're not going to have them do that thing? Like, brother, the reveal that Evelyn was the old lady, speaking of things being nonsensical, for the whole game, we've seen Granny Evelyn move around all over the place and then disappear. So she's clearly able to move around. So here's a question. When we're about to inject her with the serum, why didn't she leave? Like she has. Stage fright? She can only do it when we're not in the room? Well, what about her projection? Why not put your projection of yourself literally anywhere that isn't directly in front of you? She is clearly able to control where she puts her projections. We know this because she was on the ship hundreds of miles away from the plantation, and Mia called them hallucinations. So again, why? Evelyn has repeatedly shown that she can influence people after she infected them. She immediately killed Alan when he disrespected her. So why did she do basically nothing to Ethan? Why not manipulate Zoe to sabotage him or lead him astray? I'm assuming she didn't care about Zoe running around creating a neurotoxin because it was the wrong one, so it wouldn't do anything. But why didn't she stop Ethan from producing the actual neurotoxin? She's shown that he's never out of her reach. She proved that when she captured him as he was trying to leave. And she only did that to make Mia come after him so she could ask if they could be a family again. And if not, then make her kill him. But why didn't she do this earlier when the rest of the family was around? I'm only asking because honestly, I'm tired of villains being fucking stupid. There is legitimately no reason for her to not do anything for so long, since she repeatedly proves that she can, and yet she simply doesn't. I mean, imagine if Nemesis just never chased Jill and only sometimes chased after her, even though you would repeatedly see him in the city. Or Sadler just never tried to stop Leon from rescuing and curing Ashley, despite needing her to remain infected. Ethan kills Granny, meets Chris, gets in the helicopter, and the canonical ending, Mia is alive and in the helicopter, and Ethan gives a nice motivational and inspiring monologue.
They say that when one door closes, another opens. Well, a door closed tonight. And what a long night it was. But not just for me. Mia and I weren't the only victims here. So were the Bakers. It was that thing, Evelyn, who made them that way. But now Evelyn's dead. And these guys are here to clean up the mess. I had just come to terms with losing Mia. And now she's back and wants to start over. Put all this behind us. Maybe this is where the next door opens.
Overall, I don't hate the story in and of itself. I think the concept is good. I think the execution was very, very poor. This game does something that I'm very happy about, and that is regarding the antagonists, and it's a point of criticism that I have for the sequel. We have a small cast of characters, each with their own unique personalities and reactions to the environment and events around them, and you deal with each of them as the game progresses. And perhaps the most important aspect, they feel alive and real despite the unrealistic setting in nature. Strange how that can happen, isn't it? I'll start with the ones that I really want to talk about, and that's the family. Such a fascinating cast of characters, and I think the game did an excellent job with how we're initially introduced to them, showing them all together, interacting with each other, and reacting to your presence there in their own ways, all moments before all of that is broken apart and you deal with them individually. And yes, very obviously inspired by the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So let's start with the father, Jack. We're given quite a memorable introduction to Jack before we even see him.
Did anyone see you? Did he see you?
Hey, who else is here? What the hell's going on?
Daddy's coming. We need to go.
Daddy?
We need to go now! No, leave me alone!
Mia?
It's an impactful introduction. It shows you just how much of a threat he apparently is. This man won't even let a damn wall get in his way. And if that wasn't enough for you...
Welcome to the family, son.
Look, if you don't remember him after that, then I got nothing for you. He isn't exactly a complex character on the surface during a majority of your time with him. He's a brutish bulldog bent on killing you and won't let anything stand in his way, all while laughing about it. There's very little to actually get from his character, and that's because most of your interactions with him are in his infected state, heightening only a few of his qualities and mixing them with insanity. The few times we see how he used to be, we see a very kind man who doesn't shy away from helping others and will do just about anything to protect his family. We can also see through environmental storytelling that he was a man of honor, so there could be a clear drive to fight and protect. Not terrible. And I think the voice actor did a really good job with him. Next we have Marguerite, who is a good contrast to Jack. She's not quite as physically aggressive or violent as him, but that doesn't make her any less terrifying in her own way. Through what she says and how she behaves, she really feels like an actual mother, and I love that. She expresses a concern to take care of people, but also isn't afraid to show a mother's wrath as if scolding a child. And I think her depiction with bugs fit pretty well with her overall design and personality. Oddly enough, I can't help but think back to previous horror games that portrayed female enemies with similar grotesque aesthetics. One of the more common being that of the spider, and how that always seems to stick to my mind. Maybe that's on purpose. Maybe something to do with how spider monsters are typically female in media. And spiders have always been a classic creature in horror, but one that I think is largely underutilized. So far, there's only one movie that I've seen that really went that extra mile, and it's a movie called The Mist, based off of Stephen King's novel of the same name. Great movie, by the way. If you haven't seen it, you should. But anyway, in this scene, you discover the spider monsters here, and you learn what happens to the victims if they are caught and not immediately killed. And yeah, once you realize what's happening, that's when the real horror sets in. That just makes your skin crawl. It's awesome. But what was I talking about? Right, Marguerite. Yeah, I don't have any complaints about her as a character. Only issue that I really have with her is one of her mechanics. Once you get the flamethrower and you bump into her in the house, if you keep spitting fire at her, she'll eventually rush you and she'll just disappear. So if you have the flamethrower and a couple of cans of fuel, you can get rid of her pretty easily and she won't be an issue. which is a bit of a contrast to Jack, where he will remain present like a shorter Mr. X until you fight him. Not a huge issue, but still worth mentioning. Also, her detection in this one part of the game is fucking awful. Like, this is a joke, but I digress. Then we have Lucas. Lucas is a little strange. Rather than using brute strength or he prefers to maintain distance, make sure there's some barrier between him and his victims, make sure no one can actually get to him. We see that represented with the locked gate to his area, him communicating to us through the telephone and the TV, and the fact that he runs away. We even see this as part of his character when he's not infected. Rather than interacting with the family, he's glued to his phone, closed off. And he doesn't like getting his hands dirty either. He'd rather use his intellect and make his victims play games he designs with almost an arrogance that they will never survive. He is, in short, a coward. He will not act unless he is cornered, with no other options. But he is still just as dangerous. Ultimately, I'm on board with how the family is portrayed. They each feel real with their own individual personalities and motivations. Each member feels unique, and that's reflected in their own sections. There's enough for you to tell what their personalities are. I just wish there was a bit more. And I can't stress enough my level of disappointment that the only way we can see their life before the infection is through paid DLC. I just feel like this was something that should have been available in the main game. Maybe they didn't think about it at the time, but I honestly don't know how you can not think about that. Like, genuinely, that's where the majority of my problems with these characters comes from. Like, what I had to say about Marguerite, most of that was from the DLC because there isn't enough insight into her personality in the base game. And I'm pretty satisfied with everyone's voice acting as well.
I was so worried about you.
Let's get this poor girl some fresh clothes and into a warm bed. We'll put her in Lucas's old room.
Oh, come on, can't you put her somewhere else?
Oh, Lucas, you just hush. You've long outgrown that room. Always wanted to run a bed and breakfast.
You got your big break, didn't you?
Nice car!
Hey, Evelyn! I'm just trying to show him. I'm just trying to show him not everybody wants to go back to how things were. There's a stupid bitch. She doesn't understand that I don't want to go back to how things were before my father found y'all. Now everybody wants to turn back the clock.
Good shit, man. Oh, Zoe. Sorry, looks like I forgot about you. That's embarrassing. Despite being a canonical part of the family, Zoe feels remarkably out of place for a few reasons. Whenever we catch glimpses of her with the family, she seems distant, disconnected, both. She sticks out. Not because she's acting weird, though that'd be a refreshing change, but because she's so normal among all of what's going on. And there's the whole infection thing. Like, she's infected, no doubt about it. But where are the signs? Like, I keep harping on this, but legitimately, at what point? Like, the only reason why we know she's infected is because she says, Ethan, I'm infected. And if we choose her with the serum, then Evelyn turns her to stone, and then that's definitively her being infected, but nothing happens. Why doesn't she look or act like Jack, Marguerite, or Lucas? And more importantly, why is Evelyn just giving her a free pass? Like I said, is she not bothered by Zoe helping Ethan? In the grand scheme of things, Zoe feels less like a character and more like an oversight, a sketch rather than a fully realized portrait, if that makes sense. Speaking of Evelyn, let's talk about her next. So she was created to have an overwhelmingly strong desire for family as a means for her to be controlled and all that. Why did she destroy the ship? What would have happened if she didn't infect Mia? What would have happened if Mia didn't wash up in Louisiana and just floated out to the open sea? What if you two got separated? There goes your mother. That's a hell of a fucking risk. What was the point? And then there's all the questions that I asked before. There's a lot of issues regarding Evelyn, and I think they could have done a lot better. Now, let's talk about our main boy, Ethan Winters. Ethan represents an ongoing debate among game developers, and that is whether or not to have your main protagonist speak. On one side, you have your Half-Life, Skyrim, Dishonored, Outlast, Far Cry 5, and Amnesia, where the most you'll get is grunts and yells, if not just complete silence. The intent being to allow the player to fully imprint themselves on the character to allow for full immersion. Here, they decided to go with the other side, that being your Soma, Far Cry 6, Outlast 2, Dishonored 2, and Blair Witch, with fully voiced protagonists so they can react to the environment around them and feel like a real person within the world and you're just along for the ride. One of the problems you often face with speaking protagonists in these games are represented in moments where they say something that you think wouldn't or shouldn't be said. And I showed examples of this before in Outlast 2. It's mostly a preference thing. I prefer silent protagonists to allow full immersion and avoid things like that.
Something a bit different that bothers me about Ethan's character is his seemingly ridiculous ability to ignore hordes of negative stimuli in relation to entering and exploring the Baker home. It wasn't enough that his wife was missing for 3 years that he would call police for assistance. It wasn't enough that the place she directed him to seemed abandoned and was filled with worrying effigies and strange omens. Hell, it wasn't enough that the last video message he saw from her, she looked genuinely terrified. Basically, Ethan just doesn't seem fazed by much.
And yes, as Waller said, Ethan has a remarkable ability to not be bothered by anything in this game. It feels really out of place with this character because this should be a situation that he isn't used to. As far as we know, Ethan has never encountered bioweapons before now. He's dressed like some sort of office worker. Him not giving a single fuck seems odd. Now, granted, this is supposed to take place sometime after Raccoon City, so maybe he's had encounters, but that would be writing the story for the writers. But Bowie, Leon. You are correct, however, Leon not giving a single fuck about the situation he's in is a little different. In Resident Evil 4, Leon consistently did not give a fuck, so we can have an easier time ignoring it. And narratively, it's easier to write off because this is not his first encounter with any bioweapons or infected people. He's been through the Raccoon City incident and evidently more stuff after that based on how he familiarly talks with Major Krauser. Sorry, that's a weird word for me. A character that we have not met before. Also, I think he's canonically an alcoholic or something. He has some sort of vice. Another thing to talk about, since this is related to characters, is Mia and Ethan's interactions, and this is going to include Resident Evil 8. To put it very simply, putting myself in Ethan's shoes and dealing with Mia, I very quickly do not want to deal with her. Because if there's one thing that's gonna get me to not be interested in a character, it would be them being elusive with me. And Mia is extremely elusive with Ethan and borderline refuses to tell him anything. Throughout this game, she did lose her memory and didn't remember what happened or how she got to the house, but she does remember Ethan. Which means she almost definitely remembers that she's a Connections agent even while she's, locked in a cell, kidnapped by Lucas, escaping on the boat. I think they need more training for these agents, because Mia sucks. Doesn't fucking tell him that she's an agent for a bioterrorism company, which, that raises a few questions, but we'll come back to that later. Speaking of being locked in a cell, tell me it feels like two people aren't actually married without telling me it feels like two people aren't actually married. These two haven't seen each other for multiple years, and one of them thought the other was dead, and well, she doesn't look happy to see him at all. In fact, in some parts, she sounds frustrated with him, which, from her perspective, I can understand. The last message she willingly sent to him was her telling him to forget about her and that she lied, and she was basically expecting to never see him again, and explicitly told him to stay away. So her not being super thrilled to see him, I can understand. Ethan, on the other hand, not even gonna try to go for a hug or something? She's her fucking wife, you dumb shit. You thought she was dead. She's alive. React or something. And then in Resident Evil 8, it's very clear in this cutscene that she has something she needs to tell him, but she just doesn't. We'll talk about this segment when we get to it in that game, but this is not how I would have handled this scene, not exactly. but how she acts here, rather than seeming concerned about Ethan and expressing that, she acts annoyed and frustrated. Not exactly a caring demeanor. Let's contrast that with Leon and Claire, who throughout the entire game are actually talking to each other, trying to figure shit out, communicating. I think they meet up a total of 3 times throughout the game and talk to each other, make sure they're both okay. And they even leave notes for each other at different points. How about Chris and Sheva? Constantly working together, working with each other. RE6? So yeah, Leon and Claire, they honestly feel like what Mia and Ethan should have been. I mean, yeah, obviously Mia is probably going to have an extremely tough time telling her husband that she's an agent for this super shady company that's basically Umbrella 2.0. But if you want him to hear you out and be understanding, might not be a great idea to keep hiding shit from him, I'm just saying. So since we're talking about her, I guess we can end with Mia. Mia. The biggest issue with Mia is that she's a bit of a representation of wanting drama present without wanting it to be resolved. So the vibe that they were going for was that she lied to Ethan about being an agent or an operative, whatever, transporting a bioweapon, and she felt bad about it, and she always wanted to tell him, but either couldn't or didn't know how. But then she got infected, all hell broke loose, and now she can't remember much, and that this is a very, very strained relationship. And they keep stringing us along with her dialogue.
I did lie to you. I shouldn't have, but I just want you to know that wasn't me. I don't know what happened. There's so much that you need to know. I know, you're right, and I always wanted to tell you, but I can only remember a little, and the rest is just gone. I honestly don't remember.
The issue is that there's obviously at least some things that she does remember.
What is this place? What'd they do to you?
Not now. We need to get out of here first.
But she's just not telling us. Like, surely she is aware that she is infected and that Evelyn infected her. She knows Evelyn is the cause.
I can hear her. I can feel her clawing her way back inside of me.
That should mean she knows what Evelyn is and at least what is happening at the Baker estate. And Ethan is rightly annoyed by this.
No more bullshit, Mia. I want some answers.
One of the few times I actually side with this vanilla ice cream cone looking ass. My investment in this situation really just evaporates after I notice that somehow every time there is a perfect opportunity to have a conversation and talk about what she does and does not remember, when she has an opportunity to fucking tell him anything, something conveniently happens to keep that from happening. Over and over again. Lucas kidnaps her, fair enough. I can understand that. Evelyn kidnaps Ethan when they try to escape. Fucking wonder why you didn't do that before. Oh hey, Mia remembers everything now, cool. So she can tell Ethan all of this stuff when they have a chance again. Nope, no time, gotta push Ethan out of the room before Evelyn makes us fight. Well, shit. Alright, I guess we'll go kill her, and then we can talk to Mia. Oh, she doesn't want to talk about it. Motherfucker, really? This is the same company that developed Devil May Cry 5, that had Neuro dealing with Dante calling him dead weight, then learning that Virgil is his father and Dante wouldn't let him kill his dad. Where the fuck was that writing for this game? The only reason why I picked Mia over Zoe is purely for tactical reasons so I don't have to waste time fighting her later. Narratively, I pick Zoe every goddamn time because she actually helps me. On a very surface level, I enjoy Resident Evil 7's gameplay. I'm at a point where I can control every aspect of the game and it becomes a very casual, very mindless FPS adventure game and I have a very good time. I know I can collect enough coins to unlock the Magnum as soon as I get to the trailer for the first time. I know exactly how Jack works so I can clear the house of goodies without him being an issue. I know how to get rid of Marguerite. I've memorized the solution to Lucas's room. This game is a breeze to me. But there are a lot of decisions that were made that just confused the hell out of me. Like this opening scene. I know that they were trying to make it look like the IRL footage with the rendered IRL setting with the trees and the road, and then they used this CGI car, and it's like, why? Why didn't you just use a real car with the real footage and then you transition to the game world when you go to Ethan's POV? Why did you make a CGI car into it and have that janky tracking? This is supposed to canonically be like 2017, right? Which was when they developed it. So just use any old car, man. It didn't have to specifically be that car where you couldn't just grab a random ass car, film some IRL footage and stick it in there. Like, this looks great. This does not. And then you have moments that you clearly weren't supposed to think too hard about because they want things to happen, but if you thought about them for less than a second, they don't make any sense. Like, oh, hey, Jack, how you doing? Whoa, where'd you go? No, seriously, where the fuck did you go? You're a magician? What's going on here? I didn't know you could teleport. Oh, look at that. He teleported again. Damn. No? No reaction here? Alright.
Oh my god.
What? You saw this thing like 5 hours ago, Ethan. Relax. Let's talk about the purse here. We have a pristine purse among a pile of burned items. We're drawn to it since it's obviously out of place and investigate. The purse is here to give us an item to manipulate and show us that there can be items within items throughout the game. However, the purse being here causes problems in the narrative, so how could this be fixed? There are plenty of objects that you could give us to run through the item manipulation thing, even as early back as Ethan's car. For example, before we exited the car, you could have had us pick up and manipulate a file folder holding the email from Mia. By doing this, you not only give the item tutorial to the player, but you also convey that Mia is around this area somewhere, and you show us the email that she sent to us, which prompted Ethan to show up in the first place. That way, if for whatever reason, someone missed the opening cutscene in Ethan's dialogue, this information can still be conveyed.
Ethan?
Hello. I'm gonna take a moment to point out one little thing here, but I'm not gonna give too much grief about it. That thing is something you've probably noticed by now. There might be a little bit of jank happening. I'm not gonna go too hard on them about it because this game was meant to be their debut game for their engine that they created, and building a game engine from scratch is not an easy thing, so some jank is to be expected, and in fairness, the rest of the game is fine. And it seems like it's only an issue for characters with long hair, so Evelyn, Mia, Marguerite. Jack is fine, Zoe is fine, Chris is fine, these two idiots on the videotape are fine. Now back to the gameplay. Invisible wall right next to Mia, and she's perfectly fine if you don't act like me for this scene. But if you become me for a minute and stare into the side of her head where she can't look at you, suddenly her mouth will just stop working. Ah, well, that's a shame. Hey, you just stay there. I'm gonna go out in the hallway and stand here for a minute. Hey, Jack. Mia, how the hell did you get in my hallway? What? What you're seeing now is me demonstrating a major flaw in this game, and that is the illusion of choice. It appears in many forms throughout many games, but in this game it appears as the game trying to convince you that you're in a QuickTime event. And you might die if you don't push the buttons the game is telling you to push. This could not be further from the truth. Throughout this entire sequence, I don't press a single button. The most that happens is I take a bit of damage. You can collect up to 3 health potions in this area, you will be fine. If you're not playing on Madhouse difficulty. So why am I calling this a flaw? Immersion, as I've said so many times now, is a major factor in the success of your horror game. The less you see the strings in the game, the more you'll be drawn into the world, making the scares more effective, allowing for the ambiance and the atmosphere to work their magic. To be fully immersed, you need to interact and face the consequences of the decisions you make or being too slow. For example, in Resident Evil 4, there are plenty of QuickTime events, almost like a skill check. And if you're too slow getting Leon to move, you fail. That is a consequence. You need to get faster. When you don't do anything at all, and there are no consequences, and the game takes over for you, well, in that moment, I wouldn't blame you if you thought to yourself, why the hell am I playing? It's not too immersive when I should probably be killed for not doing anything, and then just don't. Just make that a cutscene at that point. The very obvious fix here is to make fail states. If you don't react, you die. Meaning you need to react and fight against her stabbing you and pulling the screwdriver out of your hand. Did it need to be said? Apparently, yes. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please direct your attention to Exhibit A, where you see I am clearly tied to the chair, and as you can see, my camera is on. I'm not going to do anything, and the game really wants me to do something. Now you would think that it's starting to look like I actually need to move a little bit, and you would be wrong. I just need to tap one button, any button actually. Once, and the game takes over again. I'm done with the voice. Why the hell don't you just have him fall over? Why do you need me to do it if you're just gonna take over anyway? I hate the guest house. Not because there's anything wrong with it, but I fucking hate bugs, dude. The first thing you run into when you walk in the house are giant buzzing bugs. No, fuck that. Bugs and mannequins, bro. Fuck off with that shit. But, speaking of the guest house, this locking mechanism with the lamp in the guest house, I think all of us were thinking, bro, just use anything else or just lift the balance until the door unlocks. Yeah. All in all, these are really the only issues that I have with the gameplay, or at least enough to talk about, just those small things. The majority of the game is a resource management shooter survival horror with boss fights. There are small moments that I like down in the basement they utilize the corners pretty effectively to give you a little jump when you bump into the molded. Overall, pretty standard for Resident Evil. There are puzzles like this morgue area and the portrait thing on the ship that I think are okay, but there's also these shadow puppet things in the house, which I don't think makes a whole lot of sense. Why would you design a house to have an annoying lock like that? But whatever. We all know I'm not the greatest at puzzles, so I really can't speak on these too much. Really, the only mechanic that I want to talk about is the healing system. A health system in a video game is always an interesting conversation. You need a system in place where you get hit by an enemy and you lose a certain amount of health. And then to keep the players from just straight leaving the game, have a way to regain that lost health and dress it up in a way that is totally consistent with the theme of the game. For example, you have a fantasy medieval setting with swords and magic and fantasy creatures, so your healing is logically going to be in the form of health potions or healing magic. Or let's say you're in a more gritty and realistic setting and you're a journalist, and the largest amount of the injuries that you're going to take will be in the form of cuts and lacerations, then your healing item is logically going to be in the form of bandages. So why is any of this something that I'm bringing up? Well, a healing system dressed up to match the environment that it's in adds to the realism and immersion element that we talked about earlier. And in this game, as we already know, we have goop juice. And I already talked about why I don't like goop juice. You know what I would have done? Sewing kits. We've got this dirty, disgusting, rotting house with one character being an old-fashioned southern mother. So, healing mechanic? Make it a dirty needle and dirty thread. And you know where I'm going with that. So the animation, instead of just pouring water on your arm after getting slapped by Jack's fuck-off shovel or slashed by one of the molded or anything else, you sew up a wound. Then you can still have the weirdness of the mold stuff. You have Jack cut his leg off, you sew it back on and it works again, and that would be a what the fuck moment. You would still have the weirdness of the infection and the mold, but you wouldn't have the contradiction of Zoe fucking stapling your hand back on for some fucking reason, and that never being a thing for the rest of the game. And that brings us to Chris jumping out of an umbrella helicopter and by extension, the Not a Hero DLC. I'm going to stand by my previous argument that information like this really should have been in the base game, since you can't guarantee that players will play the DLC, and this is information that is important for your plot to make sense. Because if players do what I did and only play Resident Evil 7, the base game, and 8, without playing Not a Hero, then Chris jumping out of an umbrella helicopter in 7 and then back to being with the BSAA in 8 makes absolutely no sense. Here's what I think happened. I think Capcom wanted their shocking ending with Chris rappelling out of an umbrella helicopter and was content to just leave it there, but when people wanted to know why Chris was there with Umbrella instead of the organization that he has always been with after Stars, they had to create an answer, which would account for the lack of a name for the shadow organization in the base game and then magically having it in the DLC. Speaking of which, this is my chance to address Chris in this game. We go through the Not a Hero DLC. The only meaningful things that happen that we need to pay attention to is that Chris is not working for Umbrella, and this is not the bad Umbrella. This Umbrella is reformed and trying to right the wrongs, and they were borrowing Chris from the BSAA to help with this operation. He murks Lucas and then learns the name of the organization that contacted Lucas, the Connections. We know that the Connections were the ones who created Evelyn and by extension put her on the ship, so that would mean they're in the business of creating bioweapons. And that would also mean that Mia works for them as an agent or an operative or whatever, so actively participating in the bioterrorism stuff. And Chris is still part of the BSAA. Chris, why didn't you arrest Mia? Because if we remember, what caused Evelyn to lose control? This dude screwed up. We don't know what he did, but he apparently screwed up, and she got out and started attacking everyone. And Mia was supposed to rein her back in and stop her because Evelyn's imprinting protocol prevents her from attacking Mia right away. So Mia is the best way to contain Evelyn in bad situations. And in extremely bad situations, she needs to eliminate Evelyn. And she did not. And, Alan's dead, so... You know, I'm pretty sure that makes her responsible for the incident. The guy directly responsible is dead, but the person who was supposed to be able to contain her failed to do so, causing the destruction of a massive ship and a civilian family to become infected, causing them to continuously kidnap random people and killing or turning them, ultimately making her responsible for the eventual death of the family and the innocent kidnapped civilians as a result of her failure. And instead of apprehending her, you relocate her. What? Would you have just relocated Wesker if he stopped killing people? Probably not. Ada Wong or Clara? Probably not. Would you have relocated Spencer if he felt remorse for everything he did and turned himself in? Probably not. And to think, this is only the beginning of Chris's character assassination. Also, he looks like a wet sock. You're seriously gonna try and tell me that you thought you could give me this as Chris Redfield and that I'd be okay with it? Here's Chris from Resident Evil 1. Here's him from Resident Evil 5. Resident Evil 6. Here's a sock that stole Chris Redfield's uniform for a day. The Daughters DLC. In this DLC, we see what happens when Evelyn and Mia wash up at the plantation and Jack finds them. And we see how Evelyn starts to take control of the family one by one. On the surface, I like it. So, question. Jack stabs himself and presumably cuts his heart, an action that would normally kill a person. Throughout the base game, every time you do something that would kill a non-infected person, i.e. embedding an axe into their neck, shooting them shooting themselves, shooting them again, They seem to enter a temporarily stunned state where they don't move and presumably regenerate. So, why does this not happen when Jack cuts his own heart? That's a vital organ that would normally kill a person. But those are really the only issues that I have with the stuff in the DLC. Outside of that, they're fine. I like this one, I like the card game, I like the end of Zoe. Not bad. So now we are coming to the end of the Resident Evil 7 portion of this, and I have one final question to ask. While Resident Evil 8 was being developed and released, the developers reported that they were going to tone down the scares, citing that players said the previous game was too scary. So now, after playing it and going over it, I need to ask, what part of 7 was too scary exactly? When you're not barreling through it and looking at it with a critical eye, this game has an immersive atmosphere, and while I don't know enough about sound design to speak on it objectively, I think the ambient sounds and such work well enough with the environment it's creating. I find the world immersive, and it has a damn good tone for a horror game. But at no point did I find anything too scary. But I also understand that I'm a bit of a weird person. I don't get scared in video games.
While we're at it, let's make sure
But I mean, this is a horror game. There are going to be elements that will probably scare you or startle you. So I would be very interested to learn what parts specifically were the too scary parts. So, is there anything that I liked about the game? Of course there is. As I've said a few times, I really like the family, I like the environment and the atmosphere, I like the quality of the sound design, but the narrative, the characters we're supposed to care about, and the overarching antagonists were all extremely flawed. I don't think it's good, but I do like it a lot. I wouldn't play it so much if I didn't like it. Well, that sure was a lot, but I think that's it for Resident Evil 7. So now that we have the foundation, in the next video we'll see what's wrong with this. See you then.